It took a bit, but I finally recorded some HDRs, and I want to go through the process of how I convert them for the CG team, check them, and kind of just do a general walkthrough of what I might do in a typical shoot, just to kind of be ready. So I'll take you from being on set to what I do post shoot, and then for a final delivery to the CG team. This varies a little bit, obviously, depending on shoot to shoot. We're going to keep it pretty simple. I used the Ricoh Theta Z1. That's kind of, I think, the baseline that I would use for on-set HDR capture. And it does work in most instances. We've kind of gone through the other methods in a different video, whether you use the chrome ball or just a pano head with like a fisheye and an SLR, or this more consumer-friendly Theta. So we're going to use P2 GUI to stitch together. You can use anything you want, but we do need to create the HDR. That's what I'm going to use. And then we're also going to talk about the importance of capturing this slate so that we can balance the HDR that we've processed to something from the actual camera that they used on set to record the images for the film. So let's get started. I first of all want to just kind of go over how we're capturing the HDRs, because I think that's important. There's a lot of different plugins. I'm not here to recommend one over the other. It's really just important that we're able to kind of get a bracketed set of raw images out of the Theta or whatever device you're using. So we use the dual fisheye plugin. It's really easy to use. There are some easy links for you to download that I can put into the comments. But basically, you want to use this dual fisheye plugin, and then it's really just something that goes onto your camera, so you can load it up and then go through the various settings. We always will do a DNG. It writes the JPEGs too, but we really want to get as much info from the camera as possible, so we use the DNG. We want to do a bracketed set. We want 9 images, and I set it to a 10-second delay, so it gives me just enough time to get out of there and hopefully not have to paint myself out. So this is just kind of a quick graphic of how we use it. It's really, the Theta has so few buttons that it's really not hard to kind of navigate once you get a feel for it. I will say the Theta has a terrible battery life, and I feel like it's only degrading as we've owned it for a few years, where if I start off a shoot with a charge of 100, after one set, I feel like it's down to 80%, and it's I'm not really taxing it that much, but I definitely have noticed that the battery life is pretty poor, so make sure you have a charger with you. Other than that, let's get started. So again, this is what I would consider hero footage recorded off of, let's say, the Alexa or Red or Sony or whatever we're doing, and I will end up balancing our HDR, which is here in raw form, to that to this take, and then send it over to the CG team. So I recorded the HDR with and without the color chart, so that way I have something to balance to. That's if you have time. If you have the luxury to shoot multiple sets, then I suggest shooting with and without. If you shoot only one set, then I would use it and keep it in, but just know you're gonna have to paint it out. Again, I think I've said this before, that I have a pretty big chart. I would prefer a much smaller one. I just don't have one at the moment. So like I said, we're gonna use PT GUI to put this together. Let's go ahead and load it up. And I will just walk through these steps that I take to kind of get to an HDR. I am by no means an expert at this part of the process. I do just what I need to kind of get the proof of concept, know what I'm doing, and pass it along to the next set of people. I would say that earlier in my career, I was able to capture the HDRs, and I knew what I needed to do on set to get the information, but I didn't necessarily know how to kind of like stitch them together properly and kind of package it for the next team. So I would kind of just like do a big data dump of a bunch of bracketed photos and let them handle it, and they did. But I've enjoyed the fact that I've now kind of taken that part of the process, and so I have a pretty good understanding of what I need to do and what I'm looking for once I do it. So we're going to go ahead and do our first set, and we'll do it with the chart. It tells you to load images or drag images in. I'm just going to load up the images, and PT GUI, especially with the theta and how it's oriented, does a really good job of recognizing everything that we need to start. So what do I need to do though? I need to enable the HDR mode. We're gonna merge these bracketed images and link their positions. So now it's kind of collapsed it all down into just the 9 exposures in a set of HDR fisheye. So now we're gonna align these images. Now, the only thing I would recommend here, depending on your situation, is that more times than not, you want to keep the Macbeth chart centered if you can. So it will just kind of help with the orientation. This is the window where you can go ahead and move everything around. So if I hold down Shift, I can pan the HDR left and right. If I take Shift off, I can actually go ahead and change the other parameters to kind of line it up exactly how I need to. But this is very much the where we would start to get most of this stuff situated. In this example, this is all I'm going to do. I just wanted to make sure that this was kind of dead center for us, and it is, so I'm happy with that. One thing that's kind of nice is that I can go into preview and actually get a little bit of a view of what this HDR is going to look like. So this is our backyard, and it's done all the work for me. This is my tripod that I use, so I will have to paint it out. Whether I do it in this app or if I do it in Nuke or Flame or whatever, just know that most likely if I'm handing this off to somebody, I want to go ahead and try to paint out as much of the tripod as possible. And like I said, if this was the only HDR that we did, then we'd want to be able to fill in this grass. So I can see that the stitch looks good. I see the full sky and I see the full ground, so I think I have everything I need. Now, in this particular example, because it's been relatively smooth, we can go ahead and start making our HDR. Let's see, there's a few other things that I want to check. Here in the exposure HDR, we want to go ahead and choose float, and let me turn off tone map stitch panorama. Don't really need the vignetting for the theta, so we can turn that off. It's going to reset this curve here, and that's totally fine. Next, we're going to start prepping for our output. So we're going to go into the create panorama. I want to make sure I create an HDR. By default, you're just going to get this kind of JPEG. We want an HDR panorama. Want OpenEXR settings. I do not have an alpha because I didn't do any masking here in the app. I want to go to a full float, so very important, and I want it to be kind of as uncompressed as possible. PIS is totally fine for us. So you just want to make sure it does say no alpha and float. And then I'm going to work in ACES, so we're going to go ahead and set this to ACES CG. And when I'm ready, after I name this file, right now it's just going to use one of the take names and put it in that same folder. We'll just call this demo with chart, and I'm going to hit create panorama, and in that same folder, let's see, it's now going to give us our HDR, and we'll pull this into Flame and check it and set it up with, again, this piece of footage that we shot here, just to make sure everything's matching, and we'll actually kind of set the check to make sure we can kind of get this same view. So that was one HDR. Let's do the other one, which I could set a template and make this so that this next set I would just follow the same steps, but just so we can go through it again, let's just do a new project. Now I'm gonna load the ones without the chart. I'm gonna select them all. We're gonna hit enable HDR mode, make sure merge bracketed images is on, hit OK. We're gonna hit align images again. It should be exactly the same, so I just wanted to show you the window again. Obviously there's a lot to play with and a lot of things you can do, but again, if I know that I kind of have a good set, I won't need to. So I'm gonna exit out of there. We could preview it again if you want, just to open in PT GUI and just get a quick sense of what the HDR is actually doing for us. This looks good. And again, it looks low res just because this is a low res preview, but the quality is pretty good. So now we're gonna do our create panorama. I just need the HDR. Oh, sorry, forgot this step. Let's go into the exposure HDR. We're gonna go float, turn this off. True HDR is good. We're gonna turn the settings. This is fine, this is all fine. We're gonna disable the vignetting. Okay, let's see what happens. And then we'll create our panorama. We want to turn this to no alpha channel, full float, PIS, and name it again. So this is demo without chart. And turn our color space to ACCG and hit create panorama. Just so we're clear, you can also create a .hdr. I mean, there's quite a few ways to do what we need to do, and OpenEXR just works best for our workflow. So we now have our demo without chart and our demo with chart, and we'll hop into Flame and continue the rest in a bit.